Hello. Thornall got the drop on me. Instead of waiting for me to ask who's here, he already said he is. Hi, Thornall. How you doing? Who else is here? How is your weekend? How has your week been? Guess who else is here? Britain's here.
It's your boy. You know, I couldn't stay away.
You think you're Darko?
Well,
Are-
he is a bro. Darko is a bro. I have to say.
Absolutely. Darko's awesome.
I saw you did a stream for Boys Life yesterday.
We did.
I didn't watch it because I haven't read it, and I had a feeling you guys were just going to spoil the crap out of the whole thing.
No, I mean, if you want to watch the replay, you can watch the first 20 minutes. We give you a warning when we really get into spoilers, and I put up a little banner even on the screen.
I wanted to read that book for a while.
Yeah, Darko is even here and saw you stealing his style. Hi, Darko. Mr. Nuts is here. Well, not really here, but at least dropped in to say hello. Hello, Jimmy. Good to see you. Caleb is here. Caro is here. A lot of the pubulars, the pub regulars. How you been, Britton?
But good. I finished up my summer class, so I've been catching up on some reads. I've been
cool.
kind of because let me tell you, taking a summer class, it sucks up a lot of your time.
Was this a summer class because you're so smart, or was this a punishment summer class?
More of the former. I did choose to take this class. Well, my dad talked me into it, but it was fine.
It was willing.
Yes.
You weren't being punished for having done something stupid during the year. Colton's here. Hello. Yeah, it's nice to actually have your summer when you're still in school.
See, I'm catching up on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell because here's the thing, I would be so burned out from school. I'm like, I don't really want to do anything else. I'm gonna play my video games for a little bit.
I can understand that very well.
Thornall asked, I'm actually almost done with like part 2. So I'm about at part 3. So
it's a damn chunky book, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
Mine almost looks smaller. I mean, mine is smaller because it's a mass market, but Reaper's Gale is a pretty thick book.
It's a good book, though.
Raph is here.
Hello.
So we got the usual gang, usual suspects.
Exactly.
The kind of people who have nothing to do on Sundays.
Exactly.
You have a nice mug.
Alicia
there,
is also
Raph.
here.
I have it's
That's
a wonderful
your Greek mug.
Yeah, I stole it in a bar in Athens.
I figured.
You stole it.
Well, I mean, sort of. Maybe it's one of those situations where you're standing outside the bar because some people are smoking. Not that people don't smoke indoors there as well, but
Yeah.
So you're standing up with like 10 people, and suddenly someone goes like, "No, let's go to the other bar." So you just like start walking, and like halfway down the block, you realize you still have like the
I've got a glass in my hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was like 3 a.m., so I have reasons.
Yeah, and I don't think bars suffer very much from glass loss. I think it's written into their budgeting.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, because they break, and drunk people at 3 a.m. walk down the street with them. Just happens.
Hey, Alicia.
Hello.
Hey, Claire.
Hello. Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Good to see you all. Tonight, I definitely want to do some sprints because I've gotten over sort of the hump in Reaper's Gale. Not that there's a hump in the writing, but it's such a big book that when you're in the first half of it, it feels like you're going uphill. And I've gotten into the second half of it after the important event, which is sort of around the middle, and it's really rolling now. And it feels like I'm now riding downhill towards the end of it. Even though I still have, I don't know, 500 pages to go. But
with the important event, you obviously mean the two demons that want to become farmers, right?
well, before that, I meant the landing.
Ah, okay, yeah.
But I have just passed the two demons who are farmers. Yeah.
Well,
It's
there's
such
demon
funny-
farmers. There are demon farmers in Malazan.
Yeah.
There are indeed, and in fact, there are demons who disappeared. I think in the
In Midnight Tide.
third book. Yeah,
I think they disappeared
Or-
in Midnight Tides.
Midnight Tides. Okay, they disappeared in the fourth book. They were told to
Which is
go
actually
check
the fifth.
something.
You know what? You know what book
Is
is
it?
also impressive in its scope? Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell,
Fifth.
and it's only in one book. So take that, Erickson.
Yeah. well, There's that, but yeah,
I'm kidding.
it's very funny that like two demons are supposed to, they're sent by their like summoners to do something, and then they just never come back, and then you meet them in a different book, and suddenly they have just like gone off to
different
become
book.
farmers.
Totally in a different place.
Yeah.
And they are occupying a farmhouse. Yeah. Brian's here.
Hey,
Jimmy finished his game of what is GOTM?
Gardens of the Moon.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you were being ironic there. I'm like, I haven't
No,
even read
but
it, and I know what it is.
Because I have such a strong association of Jimmy with Game of Thrones, I just kept seeing Game of Thrones M.
Oh.
I was like, what is that? And Guns of the Moon reread, and it's just absurd the scope Erickson Slyly has set up in the first. But yeah, totally. And I mean, it's also like that. You hit Reaper's Gale. Just this little side thing. It's not really a spoiler to talk about the demons who are farmers, but you know, some soldiers are sneaking up on a farmhouse intending to occupy it, and then two demons come charging out of the front door. And after a moment, you're like, "Are those two demons?" Yes, they are.
So,
Yeah.
I'm also
And I very much agree with you, Jimmy. It's impressive, and the stuff that you realize on a reread that he sets up in Gardens of the Moon. This is one scene where one character. I don't want to give anything away here for those who plan to still read. But like, there's a scene where one character visits a different character's home and just looks over like the books and the stuff that are lying on that character's desk, and reads a quote there. And that whole quote is something that basically explains the larger events of the entire series, but you only realize that when you're rereading it and know what it's all about and kind of understand what chainings are. But it's
Brian is here, and he's not enjoying Disquiet Gods. Like I said, Brian asked me about this.
the
other
many
day.
miseries of Marlowe. I like
Yeah, it's the first third to maybe half of Disquiet Gods is kind of slowish because it's kind of ramping back up from the ramp down of the previous book. But the last half to 2/3 is a bit more exciting and a bit less just Hadrian suffering. But yeah, we'll see. Oh yeah, happy birthday yesterday, Raf. Bex is here
thanks.
and wishes you a happy yesterday birthday.
well, thank you very much. I just finished my birthday book that I got given as a present yesterday, and I'm done with it. And it's
Which was?
it's a brilliant book, and it made me very angry, which was kind of the point.
You
it's
don't
the
read books that don't make you angry, do you? I mean, that is the point of you reading books.
Not necessarily, but sometimes. In this case, it's How to Suppress Women's Writing by Joanna Russ, which is, well, yeah, it's supposed to make you angry. That's literally the point.
It's a title that sounds like it's aiming to make you angry, yes. Jerome is actually here. Jerome, who told me on the Discord that he wasn't going to make it. And I said, you're a loser and you have no excuse. I don't care if you're traveling. You obviously have internet. And he made it. Well done, Jerome. Yeah, Brian has faith in me. Yeah, well, don't have faith in me. You have to have faith in Rockio. And I'm not guaranteeing that you'll like the second half. But it does change. There's a very concrete feeling. There was a point where I was like, oh, okay, now it's really started moving. Whereas the first half of it was kind of more, I don't know, contemplative and not too much was happening, and it was introducing new characters and stuff like that. The second half felt like it took off a bit more and became more of the space opera adventure that it had been in the past.
Well, I'm still not going to read it until it's done.
Yeah. Jerome said it's too hot outside. I am almost ashamed as an Australian to say it's gotten unpleasantly hot here.
Yeah.
And because unpleasantly hot, apparently, with my German adapted blood, only means 30 degrees, which is like 85 in freedom units, as Jimmy says. I've been really disappointed in myself because the last week it's been like between 25 and 30, and I've been sweating my ass off and complaining about the heat. I'm like,
It's also been very hot out here in Oklahoma, so
yeah. The thing is, 30
it
used
is
to not
June.
be very hot.
it
For me.
is June, Matt. So it is summer.
I know. I mean, I know, but the worst thing about it is that I'm actually complaining about it, which I find very disappointing because I used to be sort of cool with 35 degrees, and over 45 was hot.
That's funny. You mentioned that, Brian, and I am actually about to start Lonesome Dove. Hopefully tomorrow I'll start Lonesome Dove.
Very cool.
Get some of it in before I get going on vacation.
Lonesome Dove apparently has one of the best first sentences ever. Not as good as the Gunslinger. I mean, the Gunslinger summarizes itself in the first sentence, which is kind of funny. I mean, basically the entire book is the first sentence.
Yeah. But it's a good first sentence.
It's a great first sentence. I mean, you hear it and you're like, oh, that sounds like something I want to know what's going on. Which is, to me,
the opening of The Steel Remains by Richard K. Morgan is another one of those like ones that stick in your mind and are very difficult to not go and read what's going on afterwards.
The City of Lies by Samantha Hawke, which is a pretty unknown, I think, Australian
American Gods for me,
fantasy author.
Line.
City of Lies. I mentioned it in pub before. The first sentence is, "I was 7 years old the first time my uncle poisoned me."
Yeah.
And I read that and I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. What's going on? But it turned out to be actually, I was a bit bored by the middle, and I DNF'd it.
One of my favorite first lines is from American Gods.
Thornall, don't read Winter King. It sucks.
Ida, it rained here today. Ida's here. It also rained here today, which did cool things down a little bit. It allowed me to actually put on a shirt for the stream. So you should all be thankful it rained here today.
I'm also hoping to start The Strange soon, which is like a weird sci-fi western.
By who?
Nathan Ballingrud. He's known as a horror writer.
Ballingrud. Okay, never heard.
I don't think I pronounced it right. If he watches this, which I highly doubt he will, but if he ever does, for some reason,
unlikely.
But yeah, apparently it's like it has a lot of things that I like. Like Ray Bradbury apparently is an inspiration for this, and I'm like, fucking love Ray Bradbury. All right, let's do it. And then he's like, True Grit. I'm like, all right, I like True Grit. And I'm in. Let's do it. And Thomas from SFF 180 really liked it. So I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Larry, bad timing. We have a Lonesome Dove read along starting on the Fireside Discord in a couple of days, or a day, whatever.
Tomorrow.
Whenever July starts. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah. So we'll be starting Lonesome Dove. So I'll be reading this thick book at the same time as reading that thick book. So we'll see how long that takes.
Thick books, Matt.
And I cannot lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, it's fine. I need to figure out what to read now because, as I said, I just finished on my way back home from being in the city. I finished the audiobook for that wonderful How to Suppress Women's Writing, and now I need to find a new book to read.
It's not really.
Kindred apparently also has a perfect first sentence.
Oh
be.
yeah, Kindred's introduction is so fucking good. Oh my god, like you read that and you're like, I want to know what the hell's going on. Like, that's my favorite book of this year so far. Fucking amazing book.
All right.
Mhm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a fanboy rant there.
No, it's fine.
Darko
Gushing-
can vouch for
gushing
me.
is-
We read it together.
Gushing is allowed.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah,
Everyone says that Raph is wrong. Winter King is great. I know nothing about Winter King. I have no opinion.
it's a Bernard Cornwell attempt of writing a historical fiction about King Arthur. And
Oh,
is-
right. Yeah,
And
no,
I have
I
minor,
know of it, but I haven't read it.
I have minor criticisms on Bernard Cornwell in general. I understand why it is entertaining, but it is also a homophobic, misogynist, historically wrong, and highly anti-intellectual. And that's something that I really don't like about Bernard Cornwell's writings.
Okay,
I only read
you're
the
I think you're the only person I've ever heard say didn't like it or didn't
only
like
read
really almost
only read
anything
the
about
first
it.
Sharp
Seemed
book,
like
and I
everyone
thought it was
loved it.
pretty good.
The Sharp books I haven't read. I read that trilogy, and I've read his Stonehenge novel, and it has similar things. Like he's really like usually women are at least duplicitous. If they are stronger female characters, they're at least duplicitous, possibly evil, which is really important, or ugly, or ugly. That's sort of like an important thing. Yeah.
But come on,
people that are
beautiful women
smart are
always
also-
are duplicitous. I mean, that's just fact.
Yeah.
Like you can only trust ugly women. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, and like the bad guys are
Right,
always
kidding.
either dangerously intellectual or effeminate or both, which is also really important. It's the whole thing, and it just like
Okay.
it makes it very difficult for me to read Bernard Cornwell books because it always comes through. It's like you can tell who's the bad guy just like from like how they're introduced, how they look, the same way that you have that with I don't know what's his face, Robert Jordan. They're two, and doing that with Arthurian stories. Well, I mean, Arthur is obviously very often used to do reactionary bullshit. That's kind of the role that has had for a long time. But it's I feel a lot of people ignore that when they're reading the Bernard Cornwell one, and because he uses sort of like the genre of historical fiction, he pretends or like there's a level of authority or realism carried in that book that makes it much easier to take in the bullshit, and that's something that annoys me in a way that say like other Arthurian retellings did not annoy me. Not that they didn't annoy me as well. Like I don't know, Mist of Avalon annoyed me as well, but it's clearly not a historical fiction, and it doesn't pretend to be historically accurate in that regard.
Right.
Well, I'm not gonna. I'm sorry you had to read Mists of Avalon. I am not reading that. I'm not reading that series ever. I don't want to support that woman.
Well, she's dead, and the money that you spend on it now goes to charities that well help.
Also, I've heard it's bad anyway. So
if your only argument is you don't want to support that woman, that's a great argument for reading it.
No, I mean,
because if you buy it today,
I'll usually read pretty much anybody, but just what she did was so heinous.
Right, but what I mean is
splintering.
It's
I can't.
It's an excellent reason to actually read her books now, because all of the profit from her books now goes towards supporting children who have suffered similarly to her children. All of the rights have gone over to her daughter, I think, something like that. And she said, I want nothing from the books, and set it up so it all goes to a charity.
Yes,
So,
who spews homophobic drivel because, of course, because she got molested, that must mean all gay people are pedophilic, which is insane. But I digress.
I mean, like Mists of Avalon.
I'm not reading Bradley's books. She's just
fine. You don't have to. And I mean,
maybe it's at a library. Maybe it's at my local library, and I don't have to spend money. Maybe. But
I read it a long time ago, and I did not like it very much myself.
Yeah.
So that's also, at least for me, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
No.
But I'm curious, actually, in a way, because I've been an Arthur fan for a long time, and I think when I was younger, I probably would have objected to the whole Arthur thing being turned so female, and I wouldn't object to that now. So I'm wondering if I'd be more forgiving of the story now or not. But yeah, for the reasons you said, Britton, I also kind of I also basically don't really have her on my list for ever reading.
I mean, I read it last year for my short Arthur video because, you know, when you talk about Arthurian literature in general, you kind of have to also mention Mists of Avalon because
Of
it
course.
is that big of a book, and the difference between, you know, reading just for entertainment and reading sort of it was more like research, and I can handle stuff that I dislike when I'm doing it for research because that's how research works.
That's
And
what most of the things you read for research are. It sounds like
that's a different thing. But like,
usually.
I mean, on the other hand, for that Arthurian video, I also read Mark Twain's Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and that one was absolutely fantastic in a way that I had not expected.
Yeah, no,
You know,
it's a lot of
that's
fun.
one Mark Twain book I haven't read, and I've loved most of his books. But then again, I read them when I was a kid.
The King Arthur book is brilliant. It ends with everyone dying, and well, it ends with a genocide. Everyone else also dying, and at the end, Merlin electrocuting himself on an electric fence.
I am kind of
Which
sad
somehow
that-
never made it in the Disney adaptation movie.
Mists of Avalon, Ron liked it, but it was long and a bit of a slog at points. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I don't remember many details about it because I literally read it maybe 30 or more years ago.
Yeah, it was a
But,
big thing in like the 1980s, right?
Yeah, exactly. When it came out, it was a big deal because it was the first, as far as I know, it was certainly the first Arthurian retelling that went really big on the women and got a lot of recognition for it. This was before anybody knew what a horrible person she was.
Yeah, but like for me, the interesting thing is that with Mists of Avalon in general is that it has very clear sort of influences of both second wave feminism and the weirder part of like a neo-pagan, Wiccan, and so forth influenced spirituality. Both of those two things intersected in California fairly early on, and Marion Zimmer Bradley and her cousin who continued writing the books after she died. I think
no idea.
They were part of a Wicca or Wicca adjacent coven, and that's so you can see a lot of these very specific ideas about witchcraft, where ideas about witchcraft often, you know, inspired from Margaret Murray's The Witch Cult in Western Europe book from the 1930s, and all of that stuff sort of coming into that book, and it kind of takes all these things which are mostly wrong, but certainly make for great fiction background. If you want to read a better book,
that was something I think also put me off when I read it, because I actually knew some girls my age who were running around calling themselves Wiccans, and they were just flaky. Like they were really didn't know anything about what they were doing, and seemed like they were mostly doing it so that they could look mysterious and sexy and stuff. And
look, I don't mind that.
I don't have a problem with sexy women, but they were just really flaky. And
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I had read before,
really
like
sexy women.
Already before reading The Mists of Avalon, I had read what's his name, Ronald Hutton, Professor Ronald Hutton's The Triumph of the Moon, which is a history of folk magic and the sort of witchcraft, modern witchcraft, neo-paganism, and so forth. And he kind of goes all the way to like the 18th century and goes all the way to like the updated versions from like 2001 or something. So that's like, from what I can tell, sort of like the best like resource on like modern neo-paganism in that regard. And I had read that before, so I recognized a lot of stuff. I'd also read Witchcraft in Western Europe by Margaret Murray, and I'd read that other one, what's it called, the Grail one by Weston, that T.S. Eliot was hugely influenced by when he wrote The Wasteland. I just keep forgetting what it's called, something about the Grail. Like, I don't know.
No idea.
Colton
says there's a new Arthur story coming out by Liv Grossman called The Bright Sword.
Yes, it comes out in couple of weeks, and I certainly have it on my list of stuff I kind of feel sort of almost obligated to read now because I've sort of turned myself into probably the best read author expert on BookTube, and with that idea comes sort of the idea that I kind of have to know what new author books come out and what they do. So.
Other than maybe Bridger. Bridger did a
saw.
very in-depth Arthur retelling.
Damn it! I was warning people
video.
not to talk about Bridger because then Raph's going to start ranting about Bridger. and
Don't
I-
rant about Bridger, Raph.
Don't do that.
He recommended Mary Stewart's Merlin series, which I know nothing about except it's old. I think it was
Yeah,
written in the
That's
70s or
the Crystal
early
Cave and
80s.
so forth, right?
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
one.
Heard
they're
Raph
good.
Raph might vouch for me on this, but my friend Alan has told me that Lavi Tihar's Arthur book is really good.
By Force Alone is absolutely brilliant.
I have it on my shelf because Raph talked about it in the pub months ago.
Yeah, it's.
Yep.
I think it's a really good book. It absolutely works better if you have some understanding of Arthur. It's not what I would recommend as your first Arthur book because it's a deconstruction. Deconstruction mostly works if you kind of know what is deconstructed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, the Mary Stewart books are good, and there's obviously there's that one that I haven't read, and I thought about maybe reading it, but also I don't want to torture myself too much. Is the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen R. Lawhead, which I have not read, but it's probably incredibly evangelical Christian. Because that's Stephen
Right.
Lawhead. I read like his trilogy. Is it called the Dragon King trilogy or something? And it's very overt Christian fantasy in a bad way. Like I don't mind Christian authors putting their Christianity into books. Like I've read some, presumably Christian authors like say J.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, and I'm fine with that. In this case, it's just poorly done, and the fact that it's the flagship like fantasy series that the Daily Wire is now producing does not fill me with confidence about its qualities either.
Yeah, I think for a first, I've never read Arthur before. I'd probably recommend The Once and Future King, just because it's very fun and easy reading, and
up
most
to the point
everybody
when the cat gets cooked in book 2.
Yeah, most everybody has seen the Disney Arthur.
Sword and Stone, which is the first.
I know
Sword and
Ursula
Stone,
K. Le
which
Guin
is-
really liked the
which
one.
is kind of based on Once and Future King. Like a lot of the ideas from Once and Future King end up
mostly from the first one, which is also called
from the
Sword
first
and
book.
Stone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think it's a good one. I enjoyed it. It does have issues, of course. I mean, all books have, especially sort of in the final book or books where T.H. White was a conscious objector. He was very much a pacifist and was against England, starting a war with Germany, which is why he moved to Ireland. But he also was a bit of a racist and really hated the Irish, which both things kind of come through from time to time in the book.
Yeah.
And
being like writing a pacifist Arthur doesn't really fit at all because there was pretty violent times. If you're taking sort of Lamort as the primary source that most people are writing from, that's pretty much the opposite of pacifist. But it's still it's an easy to read book. It doesn't require a whole bunch of weird Arthurian knowledge or historical knowledge, and it's mostly kind of fun.
It's really fun, and it gives you a fairly good explanation of what Pelagianism is, which is definitely something that comes up in the book for reasons that are kind of hard to explain. Mostly for T.H. White to make a joke.
That's a sentence I never thought I'd see in the pub. But Balin le Sauvage for the world. Yes, yes. Sir Balin is pretty hardcore in Lamort.
Yes.
He doesn't compromise his principles at all, which leads to all sorts of people dying.
If I recall, I think
including him.
I think Ursula K. Le Guin really likes T.H. White. If I remember right, I think she likes Once Future King at least.
Yep.
Yeah, no. It's a really good book. It's very easy to read. It covers most of the core Arthur stories in interesting ways, because there is no definitive Arthur text. Maybe you can use Mort as that sort of like big collection that kind of has all of it in it, but everything has always been a variation on these themes.
There are lots of things around it, and Lamort
Yeah.
is also a collection of previously sold stories where even the author keeps referring to the French, like they say in the French tales, and he's collecting all of these things from previous authors that were writing, bunch of different authors, bunch of different stories, bunch of different time periods, and he's putting it all together into one kind of semi-cohesive narrative,
while he was stuck in the Tower in London for being a fucking murderer and robber baron, like literally a robber baron, which is like kidnapping people and so forth.
Yeah, he was a pretty hardcore dude himself.
It's
Thomas
so
Mallory.
funny.
Yeah,
Thomas Mallory is such a funny dude in that regard. It's like, like technically, I guess you have the Geoffrey of Monmouth history of the kings of England, which is where the first time where you get like the core of the Arthur story. Geoffrey also invented Merlin, so that's pretty cool. And then you add like the Chrétien de Troyes, the French part, which is obviously the Lancelot stuff, the Grail stuff. That sort of comes in from Chrétien de Troyes, and then you have some Welsh stuff from the Mabinogion that kind of gets put in there as well, and then you kind of goes out from there. And the interesting thing for me with Mallory is, and I read some papers on it, how much Mallory is once again taking these Arthurian stories and sort of filtering them through the lens of the just finished War of the Roses, which is why so much of Le Mort is very much about like integrity and the king holding together the country and keeping stuff from degenerating into chaos and so forth, and ultimately failing at that, which is sort of the experience that sort of the experience of mobility in the 14th century.
And in Le Mort, as Thornell points out, Arthur conquers Rome. The Roman Empire pays tribute to King Arthur.
That part is so
which he also covers in like basically 4 pages.
It's
like the Romans come to him and demand tribute, and he says, "Nah, fuck that," and he goes to demands tribute from them, and they say, "No, who do you think you are?" And then he goes and invades and takes over the Roman Empire.
Yeah, but that is also
becomes King Arthur Caesar.
Yeah, that's also part of Geoffrey, I think, from what I remember. That's so it's just like super weird and random. It's like and then he goes and fights against the Roman Emperor Lucius, who may or may not have been an identified Roman general or whatever. They have a big battle in France, and then there's all kinds of additional weird stories about stuff that happens on the side. That's sort of, I think, when they first have like add their Black Knight, whose name I keep forgetting.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of like they meet that guy in France on the way to conquering Rome.
It's also how Lancelot kind of becomes really important because
he kind of runs that whole thing.
Well, Arthur allies with Lancelot's father and uncle, I think, who are French, and they all go off to Rome together. Anyway, I wanted to do sprints this time, so let's do sprints.
I'm gonna get something to eat, so I'm gonna
do it.
I'll be back.
All right, we will.
Maybe I'll get some sprints once I'm back, but we'll see.
We will try not to pine away while you're gone.
All right.
So let's go until 5 past the hour.
All right, and I'll see what kind of book I can find.
Yep, and don't forget to mute yourself. I keep saying that because I have often forgotten to mute myself, so it's a reminder for me as well.
Muting myself right now.
Me too. Hello.
Well.
And here's an Evie.
Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
You've been sprinting like mad this weekend.
Listen, I'm gonna blame Kate because she's the one that requested it and she wanted me to host. So I was like, all right. And then alcohol was involved, and it always goes much longer than planned when alcohol is involved.
Well, and you were also sprinting before our boys' life chat, and then immediately after our boys' life chat, I got a notification that you were starting sprints, and then today. Welcome, Evie.
I mean, there's something to say for reading sprints because I've read more in the past 3 days than I have in the past probably 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
we're together.
See,
Sprints are good.
I listen to audiobooks when I'm at the gym on like the fucking cardio machines. So I'm doing literal reading sprints there. Sort of.
Hey.
Hey,
Hi, Chadia.
Chadia's here.
Hooray!
Ron's here. Yay.
Ron has been here, to be fair.
Ron was here, but I don't think I officially recognized his presence earlier. So just wanted
How
to
dare.
do that.
Kadia's here.
Yeah. Oh man.
Chadia, any update on the book? Matt, you're not the only one that's having problems with delivery because freaking stupid Belgium mail delivery, whatever they're called, post office. There you go.
Why are you getting books from Belgium though?
No,
She's
I'm
sending them to Belgium.
Yeah, I sent a book to Belgium and I sent a book to Matt. And apparently the post office sections are just like
It's not in here. It's not actually a problem yet, right? It's just I wasn't home, and when you're not home, they try and leave it with a neighbor, and if they can't, they take it to a shop down the street,
and then you have to go and pick it up.
And then I have to go physically there and pick it up. So mine is not in customs. I may have to pay duties on it, which I can do in that shop down the street, and then I'll get it.
Yeah. So the trick is you need, if you send stuff over borders that are not, like the European Union, and I know this because, I've shipped I guess an actual metric ton of records over the years. You need to fill out a sort of customs form when packing, which is something you probably don't know when you're not actually selling stuff. And even if you're not selling but sending a gift, you need to make sure that you state what is in the thing, in the packet, and you need to have it on the outside, on the label. You need to state that it is in fact a gift.
Yep, I already did that. It's customs form, like our post office requires the customs form,
and then it still kind of sometimes gets picked up by customs. I had to go to the fucking customs office once because I ordered a CD. I ordered one CD from a Colombian from Colombia, and apparently small packages from Colombia just get picked up by the customs service.
I wonder why.
and
that surprises me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been to the customs office a bunch of times, and they're like, "So, what's in this package?" And I'm like, "Colombian speed metal." And they're like, "Oh, speed, right?
From Colombia."
And they then asked me to open the packet for them, take out the CD, take out the tray out of the CD to make sure nothing is hidden in there. They're like, "No, man." I'm just a weird guy who sometimes orders, CDs from bands from different continents. I know that's not, normal, but
it's really random these days in Germany. It used to be, I remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago in Germany, anytime I ordered anything from overseas, it would get stopped and I would have to go to the, and I mean, it was above a certain value. I would have to go to the customs office and open it. And
Kickstarter was the worst because all those Kickstarter, like all those role-playing game Kickstarters came, and then you need to explain because they're different things. Like books have different tax values than other stuff, and you have like I remember having like a Traveler. Yeah, I think it was Traveler, like Mark Miller's Traveler, new edition, 5th edition, whatever, big book, and he had like all these like fake coins and other gimmicks and like a T-shirt and everything, and then you need to explain that, and then they want like a receipt when you paid for it. It's like, no, I didn't pay. Kickstarter is not like paying. I gave this guy money to do something, and this is what he gives me as a thank you. We're not having a business interaction in that regard. And It was such a conversation, man. At some point, they just like gave up and go like, okay, we'll just start doing the book thing and forget the rest and assume that it's just like it.
Yeah, these days in Germany, it seems to be really random because
Yeah.
I have a Broken Binding subscription, which
Mhm.
means I get at least one book from them every month.
They're based in the UK.
And
right?
normally, they're what?
Are they based in the UK or the US? Because I'm not
In the UK.
Yeah, in the UK.
Um,
right, but like the UK being
UK
no
is
longer
not
part of
EU
Europe.
anymore. So, but even still, that one book a month almost always just gets
Slide
delivered
through. Yeah,
with nothing to pay.
yeah.
Except recently, one of them I had to go pick it up from the shop and pay duty on it. So I'm
Yeah.
paying like $25 for a book, and then I get another third of that price on top, which is kind of a pain in the ass.
It is. Well, trust me, like the whole fucking like UK leaving thing has been obviously a pain in the ass for everyone.
Yeah, including most
Most
people in the UK.
Yeah, that's the point. Most people in the UK as well. Yeah. It's been like really fucked up for musicians or like smaller bands in particular, because technically when they come here now they need to go like they need to have like a work visa or whatever. So usually they're like, no, we're tourists, we don't do anything. No, we just have these guitars because we like to play with our friends. Don't ask about it.
Yeah, I've got a friend in the UK who runs a role-playing game shop. Although the main thing she does is she hand makes things like dice bags and little.
Oh, which one?
All Rolled Up.
Oh, I know them. They've done like stuff for Pelgrane, which kind of makes sense
Yeah.
because you hang out at like the Kraken with all those.
Exactly, that's where I know them from. And Phil, who's the lady, she's actually Australian, but she lives in the UK.
Yeah.
And her husband Paul, they do all of these things, and they come over to Germany once a year for a small convention, and they bring a small amount of stuff, and they almost always have a hassle about it.
Yeah.
Because they're importing goods, but
Yes.
like they're selling them to maybe 20 or 30 people. It's not like they're setting up a shop in Germany or anything.
Yeah.
But
It's a massive hassle. Like, I mean, obviously, like it's sort of a big hassle for like big companies, but it's a much larger, like relatively much larger hassle for like small businesses. All this like sort of like underground stuff that like where we do when we do like role playing stuff, which is basically just like making stuff and selling it to like your friends more or less. And the same thing for like most underground music, which is going over and playing for your friends who maybe buy you a beer and a t-shirt afterward. And that stuff got stopped real hard because you can't just hire a guy to figure out all the tax bullshit that is suddenly added.
Yeah. It's just too complicated for small businesses. It's kind of a pain in the ass. We should institute the Federation of Planets immediately.
Yeah, apparently I'm the metal Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, exactly. You're shipping speed into Germany, or at least speed metal.
Speed metal, yeah.
So, what'd you guys read while you were on the? I didn't do a lot of reading because I got something to eat. But
my answer's boring for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, and probably will be for another 2 or 3. It's like Reaper's Gale. I'm still reading Reaper's Gale. I'm like
what book is that in the Malazan saga?
7. Yeah.
Book 7 is the book where finally most plot lines sort of converge in like one novel. Whereas, for example, book 5 starts an entire new plot thread that has nothing to do with anything that happened before.
Yeah.
And book 7 is the book where like all these different groups finally end up at least on the same continent.
Yeah, Pete says anything but boring Reaper's Gale. Yeah, it's funny. I was finding the first third of it simultaneously a bit slow and too fast-paced. Let me explain. It felt a bit slow because not that much was actually happening. It was a lot of people moving into place for things to happen. And it felt a bit fast because the perspectives, like which POV are we experiencing, was changing like every 1 to 3 pages all the time. just constantly snapping back and forth between all of these many different people in many different places. But it's all kind of solidifying now.
Yeah.
When you get to about the middle of Reaper's Gale, there's a big thing that happens, which starts focusing the story a lot more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Reaper's
Until
Gale.
then, it's mostly about fascism, secret police, and manipulating the economy.
Yeah.
Which makes it such a good book.
And the inevitability of the unavoidable inevitability of a more complex, greedy society flattening every other society around it.
Yeah, I feel Reaper's Gale might be Erickson's angriest entry in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I think he's written angrier novels, obviously outside of that, but it's sort of
Toll
like
the
the one
Hounds
way.
has a lot of anger in it as well, I think.
Yeah, but Toll the Hounds also has a lot of grief, which sort of overshadows the anger for me. But like Reaper's Gale, he's like the clearest about like this shit sucks.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, how high is Memories of Ice on the Malazan scale? For me, Memories of Ice is definitely in my top
which
3.
regard?
Well, I think he's just asking us how we rank it as far as favorites. And Thornall, if that's not what you're asking, please clarify. But for me, I don't really have a clear ranking in my head, and I don't really like those rankings because they change every week or day anyway. But I think Memories of Ice for me it's definitely in the top 3. Yeah. I don't know about for other people. That's one of the things I really like about Malazan is kind of actually a sign that it's a deep and good series. Is that everybody you ask will have a different ranking. And some people have said their number 1 book is like the book I would put at like number 9, you know. So I like that about it.
I don't necessarily rank books. For me, I feel like Midnight Tides sort of might be my favorite, or Reaper's Gale, because obviously these are subjects that I personally like have a lot of interest in. And whenever Erickson takes on like late capitalism and how it's kind of fucked, and and you know, colonialism and imperialism in that regard, those are things that I'm personally interested in, which is why those books sort of, you know, strike more chords with me than some of the other novels.
Yeah.
But,
so you'd be a Midnight Tides and a Reaper's Gale fan for sure.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
Hard, you know, not exactly a surprise, I suppose.
No, it does not surprise me at all.
I feel like Memories of Ice, I always feel for me is almost a bit too smooth, too straightforward in a lot of ways. It's too much big action for me. I'm like, I understand. It's
too much fun for Raph to enjoy it.
Don't get me wrong. I still enjoy it. I really like the whole like you know, the talk and Onos Tulan thing is obviously brilliant. I love that. And there's other stuff that is really good, but it's a bit too blockbuster.
Okay, see that is one of the things that I like the most is the epic shit. And when the epic shit is really epic, then it's definitely going to be one of my favorites.
I mean, like obviously that final, like the final large sort of finale battle thing is incredibly well sort of like choreographed. The way he does the whole thing, and the groups like dropping in almost like by helicopter, obviously not helicopter, but you know what I mean. Like having that on its own is incredibly impressive. The same way that say the that chapter in the Bone Hunters is incredibly impressive, because you could just like take that one chapter and turn it into like a war movie, like I don't know, fucking Black Hawk Down or whatever, and it feels like that.
Yeah.
The way you switch perspectives and stuff like that. He's incredibly good at that.
Chapter 7 in Bone Hunters feels like a little super stressful war movie.
Yeah,
all by itself.
Wasn't Erickson influenced by Vietnam War writers?
Specifically Glenn Cook, who is a Vietnam War vet who writes or wrote fantasy.
He writes. He's publishing new novels. He's still alive. He's 80. He's 80.
I knew he was alive, but I wasn't sure he was still publishing anything.
Some publisher announced like 3 novels. 3 upcoming Glenn Cook novels. Like he's apparently written a further Black Company trilogy, and like the first one is already more or less done, and the other 2 are outlined, and he's working on them.
So last I heard, he actually put it in an interview that he's written all 3 of them. It's just a
Yeah.
matter, and he's started writing another trilogy. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the one that you're thinking of, but he's written an entire trilogy, and it's with his publisher. He has no idea when it's coming out. So
Yeah, so
Ida is a complete Silchus Ruin simp, and says,
which is understandable. He is
since
cool.
Memories of Ice suffers for not having Silchus Ruin in it.
That is
But
true.
yeah, he's a badass, no question.
Which is one of the reasons why the Carcanus trilogy is so good, because it's Silchus gets to be the really cool kid in that family there, because fucking Amanda Rake being moody and goth all the time, and Silchus is just out there in bars getting hammered.
Yeah.
He's very much a party boy.
Larry's favorite Malazan books are ones with Tail and Bug. Yeah, I can agree with that.
Which would also mean both Reaper's Gale.
Exactly. Reaper's Gale and Midnight Tides. I don't really rank the books based on the comic relief characters, but I do love Tail and Bug a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying being back in a Tail and Bug book.
Yeah.
And I love Krupp to death. Iskrull Puss can get fucked, but I love Krupp.
But Mule Bowl is one of the best things ever.
Yes, Mule Bowl is pretty epic, but yeah, I don't really get into Iskrull Pust. He just annoys me, and I love Krupp, and I know people who feel the exact opposite. So
I think they're both annoying, which is why I like them both. They're just annoying in different ways.
I don't know what it is, but there's something about Iskrull Pust that really annoys me, and there's something about
Does his smug aura mock you?
No, I think the thing about
Pusk
Iskrull Pust. No, I think the thing about Pusk is he's always acting like he's mad, and he may be, but he probably isn't. Whereas Krupp is always acting like he doesn't know what's going on, and he definitely does. So, but
I hope Evie at least got that reference.
Krupp comes across to me as much more witty and intentionally funny. Whereas Iskrull Pust is just acting like a crazy person, which is annoying.
I love that. There's like one scene, and I think it's
let Evie.
Yeah, real quickly, Burton. Oh my God, I can't even talk. Britton. I heard my name, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been zoned out since you guys started talking about Malazan. So
I figured.
If you're asking me to get a reference about Malazan, I do not.
No, it's not about Malazan. It's
wasn't
Britton hasn't read it. He can't make Malazan references.
No.
No, I said its smug aura mocks me. I thought you'd catch that because it's always sunny. Don't you like It's Always Sunny?
Oh yeah, okay, yep, okay.
Someone likes It's Always Sunny in this chat. I don't know who it is, but
it's definitely me.
It's definitely Evie. Yeah.
I haven't watched
aside
it,
from me.
I haven't seen it
about it
either. So
but what did you read, Britton, to get off the Malazan nerd thing that just Matt and me have going?
Let's wake Evie back up.
Yeah. So first of all, yes, New Glen cookbooks, and I am so there for it, man. I'm so fucking there for it.
I really want to start Black Company again.
I'm hopping back into Black Company, and I'm gonna read my hope is to read Water Sleeps next.
Water Sleeps. I'm very curious to find out what you think of Water Sleeps, because
I loved Bleak Seasons, and apparently a lot of people don't like. That's one of the least favorite.
I love Bleak Seasons. The way he has like these 3 layers of like flashbacks going on at the same time is brilliant.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, do you know who's going to be the analyst for the next one for Water Sleeps? Have you looked at that?
It was spoiled for me, so yes, I do know who it is.
Yeah.
But Britton, so that you can answer Raph's question before I start talking about Black Company. What are you reading?
Well, right now I am catching up on because I had a class. It took up a lot of time. You know how it is. But I am getting through Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell right now. I am catching up on it. And
how far are you in that one?
I am more than halfway through. So
where are you in the incredibly boring war against Napoleon bit already, or not yet?
Oh no, I just.
I'm sorry. Those are fighting words, Raph. I love the war with Napoleon part. I want an entire freaking book about that.
Don't get me wrong. Napoleon can get fucked. I just found those war bits not as interesting as the rest.
So they just beat Napoleon at Waterloo, and now Norrell's being an asshole and shutting down Segundus's dreams, and by getting rid of his magical school, because Norrell's a selfish prick. He wants the magic all to himself, baby. He just give me all that magic. I want it all. Unless you're straight.
That's certainly one way of reading what's going on in that book.
But there is
it's apparently controversial across the board. Like Ron is totally Team Evie. Darko's totally on Raph's side. I think I'm on Raph's side, but it's been a long time since I read Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Jonathan Strange. But it's like as if the book is like labeled, the narrative has this kind of versus thing.
Hey, crazy.
It's a
book about conflict. I never noticed that.
But I have to say, I am really liking this book.
Is it though? Because it says Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is a conjunction and not a versus in the title.
Well, Pride and Prejudice.
Though I will say they have
split up. Those two go really well together.
Have split up, which was really sad.
Who has split up?
He just because Norrell, he might be a jerk and a selfish jerk at that, but he just wants friends. He just wants someone to appreciate magic with him.
So here's why I had like sort of issues, not issues. I mean, it's still a brilliant book with
why
I thought the war stuff with especially Segundus being in war, doing the war stuff, didn't work as well for me. I think the book is at its strongest when it sort of does the more like examining British manners, British class conflict, and all of those things in a very specifically British conflict context. And when it switches to just like the war stuff, it kind of picks a different genre to work at, which is your Hornblower and whatnot, like war novels. And I don't think that genre as a whole has as much to sort of give that you can sort of play around, deconstruct, and generally embroider in the way that Senna Clark does with the more like Jane Austen inspired, Regency sort of like literature when we're in Britain. And that's sort of why I felt those war parts were not as strong, because there's not as much to sort of do fun things with.
I don't hate the war parts. I like them, but I'm like, all right. There's some funny. I do like Wellington, and I do like Wellington and Strange's dynamic. That is a lot of fun.
I will say I understand like the war parts were very glossed over. I wanted more depth there. Like I could read an entire like book about that stuff, but that wasn't her focus. It was obviously the dynamic between.
I admired the scope and just the imaginative prowess of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And it's only one book. It's a big boy, but it's one book. So you can suck on that, people who make like 10-book sagas. I'm being facetious, of course.
You could cut that book into a individually reasonable sized trilogy, though. It is that big.
That book as a whole is longer than the first Black Company trilogy.
Literally. They published so literally
what edition is that?
Folio Society.
That is a beautiful copy, by the way.
Turn around the box.
Yeah,
no,
so
turn it around,
what I'm holding up and what I'm showing Raph is the Folio Society editions of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
All the way around. All the way around.
Oh, sorry.
All the way. Oh yeah, cool. Nice.
But yeah, so they Folio Society did an edition of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and they separated out. It's 3 separate books. One book per volume in the text. So. Mm-hmm. So technically, it could be. You could argue
kind of is a trilogy. Yeah.
What I find interesting is that there's going to be, and I saw that because I'm someone who sometimes scrolls through the entire list of upcoming audiobooks in the genre of fantasy and science fiction on Audible.
As you do.
Look, how am I going to find out what's coming out? Apparently, Audible sucks at telling me about books that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
it just wants me to buy Lee Bardugo's The Familiar, and for whatever reason, the first Harry Potter novel. I have
And audiobooks just in general are treated as the redheaded stepchild of books.
no, but the interesting thing though is I scrolled through that list, and there is a 25th anniversary edition of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell coming out, and they're making a new audiobook out of it, which kind of confuses me. So like, I need to find out whether Susanna Clarke actually did some re-edits and stuff on that, in the way that, say, Umberto Eco did, like re-edits both for Name of the Rose and Foucault's Pendulum in the early 2000s, or whether they have, like, I don't know, probably just like an introduction, probably by Neil Gaiman, because of course.
That's what he does. Neil Gaiman has written like 10 times more introductions than he's written books.
Yo, but hey, everyone makes fun of him for it, but I kind of respect it. I'm glad that he's giving his
He
name
writes good. He writes
promoting
good introductions,
lesser-known
no
fantasy
questions.
I want to make it
I
this
like
way.
his
Like,
introductions, but I mean, I definitely have more books with an introduction by Neil Gaiman than by anybody else.
and you know what? Why that
I've got
is
at
really
least
brilliant?
6.
Because when I went on Audible and was searching for a Neil Gaiman novel, so I typed in Neil Gaiman, it also got me all the audiobooks of versions of novels that he wrote introductions for, and
Oh, okay.
I discovered a ton of really good books that I would probably otherwise, well, not have read as early as I did, like, you know, Blood in the Mist, and
Yeah.
obviously Swords Point by Alan Kushner, and a lot more, because they just show up, which is why
it's kind of like a cover blurb, but even better.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Neil Gaiman has written an introduction for a bad book yet. You know, so
No.
introduction by Neil Gaiman inside is always like, I've never even heard of this author, but I mean, Gaiman wrote an introduction, so might as well buy it.
Should,
You know,
should be good, yeah.
No,
Same happened to me with it's how I, as a non-Swedish person, discovered the Longships, which is Röda Orm in Swedish, which is an absolute masterpiece of a book.
okay,
But Michael
Never heard
Chabon
of
wrote an introduction for it. It's
okay.
I can highly recommend it. Like, it's apparently a big classic in Sweden, and no one outside knows about it.
Okay.
It's Viking story. It's a historical novel. It's about this guy, Orm, the Red Orm, which is like the Swedish title, Red Orm, and he goes and does Viking things, and it's written in the 40s. It has a really cool sort of, you know, it has a positive Jewish character, which is, you know, quite the statement for like a book written in Sweden in the 40s. So there you go. And it kind of covers like
Swedish
three.
were pretty cool.
It covers like 3 sort of larger. They were written like as 3 individual stories and then published together. It covers like 3 trips that Orm does. Like, one is he goes to Spain, a Vikinging to Spain, which is where they find that Jewish character, and then he ends up first as a prisoner of the Muslim Caliphate or whatever it was in Spain, and becomes then like part of like the Sultan's or Caliphs or whatever guard, and does that stuff. And then the second one is about him going to England, and the third one is about him trying to go to Byzantium, at that point still Byzantium, so going through Russia and doing that part. It's really funny. It's really good, and you can see sort of in the background the larger overarching theme is like how slowly Scandinavia gets Christianized, and how his wife is like fully into like the whole Christian thing, and he's sort of like more on a pragmatic level. It's like, I guess we also have a priest because, you know, priests bring good magic, and it might just work and stuff like that. It's really, really good. I highly recommend it. It's one of the best and funniest historical novels I've read in ages, and it's just like really, really good. More people should read that book. And
I just
so said Michael Chabon.
I just Googled around a little bit, and
Yeah.
I found I think it's a fan page of Neil Gaiman, and they've got a whole page that is just introductions, afterwards, forewords, and prefaces that he's written. And there are at least, they're not numbered, but I'm thinking there are at least 200 to 300 something like things that he's written on it. So yeah.
It's like he likes books or something, which is honestly
it's crazy. He likes books. Weirdo.
I mean, I know I was saying that jokingly, but actually, in all seriousness, like, there aren't that many authors that are so outspoken about their love for books,
Mm.
Oh no, I mean he's like
and he's definitely one of those.
every interview I've ever seen with him has just been gold. Like it's so much fun listening to him talk about books and writing. And he just seems like such a remarkably charming and nice person. You know, he's very high on my list of
trout fishing.
authors that I want to have a beer with.
He even
You
did
know.
an introduction to a book about trout fishing in America.
There you go.
Sounds
Like,
right.
what is this?
He's pretty diverse. There's a version of Dune with a Neil Gaiman introduction. Okay,
There is.
Oh
I
my
have
god,
it.
yeah. I've seen that
Jesus.
version.
Okay.
Now that one I didn't
have-
need Neil Gaiman for.
No, like Neil Gaiman isn't the first person to come to mind when I think of Dune. I have 3 different editions, or 4,
This-
3.
Mhm.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah,
This
I didn't
one
get that one.
enrages me, by the way, because Penguin Galaxy. This is correct, right side up, pages, whatever. And then this is the spine.
Oh, that's printed like a German book. That's actually a really funny thing. If you ever, like, nobody in the world probably needs to know this except me. But if you're ever looking at a bookshelf and you're not sure if you're looking at a German or an English version, the German titles on the spine are always turn your head to the left, and
Yeah.
the English are always turn your head to the right. So you can scan over the German ones very easily by just turning your head to the right and ignoring anything you can't read.
No, like the French, this French version of. Took me this long to say it. Spear cuts through water, but this French version, it's the same way. You have to tilt your head, but the title is still at the top. It's not at the bottom. Like,
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, that Dune version, what looks really weird about it is it seems kind of a pity to make the title so damn small. I mean, it's only 4 letters, so fitting it on a spine, it can't be that big, obviously. But it's
Yeah, you
just
could even put it like the way that you don't even need to tilt your head in any way.
so
It's
I
that
Yeah.
will,
yeah, true.
I will say from what if I remember correctly, well, no, the
No, you don't.
editions that they did of the Left Hand of Darkness and Neuromancer, I think it's the same typesetting, same way, like same setup on the like spine.
Yeah.
So I think they just kept the size the same for all of
Right.
them, regardless of.
Okay.
So it's more like being lazy and just taking the same template and just like dropping in new letters.
Yeah.
Apparently German, French, and Spanish publishing, they all put the books they put
This
the
way.
spine typography, turn your head left. Dutch are same as English, though. Okay, that's
I
interesting.
didn't know you could
It-
read French, Evie.
I really
don't.
no, she
But she
just
liked the
wanted to
cover.
have the copy of Spear Cuts Through Water in every language.
Well,
Yeah.
no, just in French. So I
Just in
get.
French, okay.
It's really I don't. So I took French, 3 years of French in high school, and 2 years of French in college. Don't ask me to say anything other than bonjour and me quoting Lady Marmalade. But I love getting my favorite books in French edition. So I have obviously Spear Cuts Through Water. I have Vanished Birds. I have the Winter Night trilogy. Someone sent me the French edition of Wuthering Heights. I have a French edition of Frankenstein, Persuasion. What else do I have?
I'm really I have been for a long time. I'm really conflicted about the Malazan French editions. I've been thinking about getting them for a long time because
They have really good art.
cover artist is Mark Simonetti,
Yeah.
and Simonetti is the best Malazan artist I've ever seen. He is so damn good, and his art is actually going to be on the new Broken Binding special editions on the hardback, not on the dust jacket, but on the hardback itself. But
Sorry.
the problem with the French editions is
They're
that the typography is awful. It's so bad. It's this really modernist typography. It's really stark and sharp, and it's
French.
it's flat, just slapped onto the picture as if they didn't see the picture.
Yeah.
So there's like one picture with a giant dragon and tiny little people down below it, and the title in this modernist white typography, just slapped right over the dragon's head, so you can't even see it. It's horrible typography and amazing art. So, yeah.
Cardinal, yes, unfortunately, no French book written by the French. Dan, yes, I have the French
Joe's
edition.
book's on there.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, right.
Broken binding. Joe's got his book on there.
That's cool.
But like, how many fantasy and science fiction books written by French authors have you read? Period.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Like
No.
anyone. Like.
But
I
think
sadly have not.
I think Cardinal meant French books written by
Yeah.
Written by French
Yeah,
people.
yeah, in general. Like how many French books written by French people have you read?
So I've read The Count of Monte Cristo. I have read Phantom of the Opera. I have read.
I've read Le Mort d'Arthur. No, not written by a French person.
I have not read that.
Joking.
They did
French
speak
titles.
French back then in England. That was
They
their
did.
language for a long time.
But he didn't write it in French, and he wasn't French.
I think those are the only two. I do want to get a Spanish edition.
Little Prince, Jules
Don
Verne.
Quixote, So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jules Verne. Yeah. I've read. Let me
Oh!
think.
I take that back. Sorry, I do have a French edition of Beauty and the Beast by Gabrielle Suzanne
Okay.
Villeneuve. So
And I've read
that's-
Robin Hobb.
Robin Hobb. Yeah, that makes sense. I recently read, because I hate myself, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is not a
Why do
good
you
book.
hate yourself?
I also read that.
that
Yeah.
is one of my white whale books. So I will take your dislike of the book as just your dislike of the book, and I'll see how I like it. But I will say
Ooh,
Speaking of white whale books, have you read Moby Dick though? All right, yeah.
I have not. That is also a
I have read
literal
Moby
and
Dick.
figurative white whale book for me.
like
I have
that
read
one.
Moby Dick.
That one I actually did like a lot.
One
I was
one-
unable to like it because I had to read it for school,
Mm.
and
That's
I
fair.
was
Yeah, then I probably would've
violently resisting.
Yeah.
And I was also like, it. Honestly, it's not one of the. It's not a book. Like, knowing what I know now, it is not a book I would give to a 14-year-old and say you
No.
have to read this.
No.
You know, like I know
Well,
I
unless
knew.
you want to torture them. Then
Well,
maybe.
I knew when I was reading it that I was not getting half of it, and I would probably enjoy it if I read it when I was
Yeah.
twice that age.
Yeah, see that's
But,
kind of how
yeah.
I got lucky there. It's like, as a kid, I had like a German version of Moby Dick that was also sort of like, shortened and simplified for kids, and I
Okay.
liked it.
Right.
And then I grew older, and I finally, when Audible started adding English audiobooks, the first English language audiobook, like one of the first English language audiobooks, unabridged books that I got, because I think it was free at the time, was an unabridged reading of Moby Dick, which absolutely blew my mind, because my version of Moby Dick as a kid was a very different one from that one. And just like seeing Melville do all these weird things when he just changes from like a novel into like an encyclopedia entry to like a drama with like stage directions and stuff like that, it just completely blew my mind. I'm like, wow, this is fucking amazing.
Yeah, he does some.
As
He does
a
some really
kid, I would have
bizarre.
fucking hated it.
Yeah. I mean, the only book I had to read in high school that I loved was The Sound of the Fury, which I still have stuff in my head from that book. Although of Mice and Men as well.
I got to read in English class. I got to read Brave New World. That was pretty good.
That's a fantastic book.
I didn't get to read any science fiction. I was always really disappointed. My stepmother, who lives in Florida, was the first high school teacher in America. I mean, this is a long time ago. It's like 30 years ago. She's the first high school teacher in America to do a class in high school that was literature, but it was only science fiction. The whole class for the whole year was only science fiction. It was the first time it would have ever been done in America.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were extremely skeptical. But like back then, I was like, "Can you come teach at my school?" and she was like, "No, but I can give you the syllabus. I can give you the reading list." And I read everything on her list.
So was Joanna Russ on it?
I don't think any Joanna. I mean, it was all pretty much classic stuff. So there
Okay.
was Asimov, Heinlein,
But that's the thing,
Dune.
Joanna Russ, and Evie. You weren't here when I talked about it because so I got given a birthday gift from a booktuber for the first time. Not the first time. Liam has given me an audiobook before as well.
I've been
Bemused-
trying to give you
I
an
know, I know.
audiobook for the last 3 weeks,
No, I know.
and
don't
Amazon
worry.
won't let me.
Yeah, fucking.
Fucking
Anyway,
pissing me off.
so
And you guys live in
Bemused.
the same country. This
That's
should be
that.
a
No.
simple-
It's more like the thing they want you to have an actual Audible account, and if you have that, then you can give gifts easily. If it's trying to do that over Amazon, it sucks because Amazon is lazy and doesn't integrate its different platforms, which is why you have like basically no integration between Goodreads and Audible
So
and
like
Amazon.
on an audiobook page on Amazon,
Mhm.
they have a button that has nothing to do directly with Audible, but they have a button there that says give as a gift.
Mhm.
And it opens a form, and you put in the person's name and email address and and you click
Yeah.
go, and it says, sorry, didn't work, fuck off.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
your experience.
sorry,
Anyway,
Russ.
Yeah.
Several like excursions back. Evie,
Yeah.
read because that birthday gift was a book that I wanted to read for a long time, and I now read it, and it's absolutely fucking brilliant. It made me
Female
very
Man?
very angry. No, her nonfiction, How to Suppress Women's Writing. I think you would really like it. Yeah, The Female Man is obviously like that's the one I was expecting on the syllabus for science fiction. Is Joanna
So,
Russ's The Female Man.
so is this like
might
the
have
Prince
been.
where she's like giving these pointers, but then being like, okay, but don't do that. Like, don't actually do that. This is like, here's what you should look for.
It's an analysis on and she makes it very clear that it's not just women's writing. It's generally like how to suppress marginalized voices in the arts in general by different techniques and like ignoring them, keeping access from like the necessary tools away from them.
She's like Ron says, she's describing what actually happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful book. It made me very angry, which is what I wanted from it. So it was good, angry, but I feel like Evie might really
It was a
appreciate it. And
success.
it's really interesting because she comes from a science fiction background. And a lot of that stuff is very much still happening even now when we talk about fantasy and science fiction, especially stuff that we talked about on Friday, Britain, when it comes to like the whole like death of epic fantasy and people complaining about romantasy, which is female coded, and that there's those same mechanisms, like seeing that stuff as lesser and so forth. That shit's still happening. So reading that book was just made me very angry. Also made me very conscious about like how much of a massive asshole I've been when it comes to these kind of things. Yeah, it's a really good book. That's my point. And yes, read The Female Man because that one is also really good.
I know.
Should we-
Carlos and Yolanda read
Yeah.
that, not
I
wrote.
was
Yeah,
gonna
they
say
mentioned it
on
recently.
about-
Yeah. Should we maybe do another sprint? What do you think?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
I'll do
sure.
some actual reading this time.
Wait. So we'll go until 20 past.
Sounds good.
Boom. So
Hell yeah, big boy.
enjoy your reading, everyone, and mute yourselves. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone.
You have to stop, Evie. Sorry.
Time to stop, Evie.
Fitzy, yes, Fitz made a brief guest appearance.
Yeah.
Fitz was
As you do.
bouncing around, yelling at me because 10 p.m. is when she's meant to get fed. And she starts anywhere between 8 and 9:30. Starts yelling at me that it's time to be fed. And we have a little argument every night.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
It's just
Yeah.
the one time you forget.
Yeah, exactly. She's just saying,
Very-
don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And now
Okay.
she's over here. She's happy. She
Hmm,
has eaten her fill.
that's good. What have you been reading, Evie? Because I know that Britain's reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And
Yeah.
Matt is reading Reaper's Scale, and I'm reading stuff we don't want to talk about. So what are you reading?
So I'm doing a very slow reread of Persuasion, doing 2 chapters a day. And I'm in the midst of chapter 4, so I'll just finish this up and then I'll go back to Lords of Uncreation by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the 3rd book in the Final Architecture trilogy.
I don't even know what Persuasion is. It sounds like
By
something
Jane
I should. Oh, that one. Okay. The title is so like one-word titles are so bad in that regard. Okay.
Could be
You may
anything.
know that you may notice that like Jane Austen came up a lot in How to Suppress Women's Writing for reasons.
All right.
And I bought the penguin cloth bound edition of Persuasion because I remember Evie talking about it in glowing terms sometime last year, but I haven't read it yet. I know exactly, and showing off her tattoo. What does your tattoo say? It just looks like blurry lines from here.
Persuasion, Wuthering Heights, and Frankenstein. It's like
Aha. Right.
the typesetting of the original first editions, or from
Nice.
the original first
Uh-huh.
editions.
So that's like your top 3 books immortalized forever.
And you
So-
may be surprised, but those other 2 books also came up a lot in How to Suppress Women's Writing.
Nice. Yeah, so I've for the longest time those were my like top 3 favorite books. And ever since I got into BookTube and I started reading more and more widely, because I used to just reread all the time. I would just reread Persuasion just all the time. And at most I read like maybe 10 books a year, if that. But ever since I got into BookTube, reading more widely, reading just more.
BookTube is a curse. Yeah.
Indeed. Chadia, yes. The TLDR version, Persuasion has been my singular favorite novel for 20, oh my god, how old am I? Jesus. 22 years. Has been my favorite novel for 22 years.
Mm.
Well,
I also want to give a shout out to whoever made Ron read the books that he had to read in 1 year, because The Jungle is such a fucking masterpiece. I mean,
What is the
it's
masterpiece?
The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, which is a
Oh.
not that well written book, and it certainly suffers from a lot of things, but it can't help but absolutely kick you in, wherever it hurts most. Is my point.
Yeah.
It's
It's
So,
socialist
absolutely brilliant.
propaganda that.
But before we go off on a rant on other books, let Evie
Yeah, yeah.
finish.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So long story short, Persuasion was my favorite book of all time for 20
Yeah.
years. And then I read Spirit Cuts Through Water and I'm like, shit, something's finally so now I have basically a criteria of like, these are my 3 favorite dead female British authors from the 19th century. And then I have my 3 favorite dead female authors from
My
the
other
20th
3 favorite
and
specific
then
category.
my 3 favorite novels of currently writing authors. And Thornall,
That's
how
acceptable.
dare you, sir? Persuasion. Clueless is Emma, not Persuasion. Okay,
Yeah.
Get that right.
And
right.
and
So what
it goes
are
in
your-
the other order. Emma is not Clueless. Clueless is Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But close. So show us the now that it's not Persuasion, show us the spear.
Oh, God, directions.
Can't-
Part.
can't
I really
see it.
like
Oh,
I really
yeah,
like
okay,
your
there it is.
tattoos, Evie.
Yeah.
And then
Your
also
skin
I've
is a
got, like,
canvas.
Indeed, it is. And then I also have
What
the
are-
pelican. So,
Oh, right. Yeah. Yep.
I was more interested in like what are your 3 dead female authors from the 20th century?
so Zora Neale Hurston, anything by her. Like,
Mhm.
but Their Eyes Were Watching God is probably, if I had to pick one, Their Eyes Were Watching God. But all 6 of her novels are incredible. So Zora Neale Hurston, Octavia E. Butler,
Yeah.
and
Makes
well,
sense.
although I guess technically you could put her as 21st century since she passed away in 2006, I think. 2007. Anyways, and then I guess I can't really technically say Virginia Woolf since I've only read 2 of her novels, but I consider Virginia Woolf as part of that trifecta.
Wolf also comes up a lot in said book.
To
As
be
you may-
fair, she did write to a Room of One's Own, so I'm sure that is
I
part
heard
of
Orlando is a really good fantasy novel.
what is it?
Orlando? It's not necessarily a fantasy novel.
Or my friend, a friend of mine called it a fantasy novel. I don't friggin' know.
There
You're
is
you're the king of the non sequitur, Britain.
Well, she was bringing up Virginia Woolf. Orlando's a Virginia Woolf book.
It's true.
That is
It's not sequitur.
I mean, like
This time-
Russ is mostly talking about like when it comes to Wolf about like 3 Guineas and like her more like activist feminist writing stuff. But yeah,
Nice.
yeah. As I said, I think it's a book you really would like to get mad about.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I've lived this woman's life, a woman's life for all my life, and so
Yeah.
this will probably just less enraging and more like, all right, yeah, I know.
For me, what I find interesting is because she does that in an interesting way, especially with the afterward, where she reflects both on how these things are sort of like nested, right? So she's like, yeah, it's called How to Suppress Women's Writing, but it's also about like how to suppress Black people's writing, how to suppress
Any other non
and how those are sort of like played against each other, and how sort of maybe now that sort of like the white middle class woman is almost accepted within the it's at least second tier when it comes to being part of society. Those are sort of like co-opted to add in the suppression of other marginalized groups and stuff, and she does add that, which makes it very interesting in all these like how these things like intersect.
There is a book, and I maybe it's down. Oh wait, hold on. Sorry, I think I have it. Yes.
No.
Okay. I thought it was downstairs, but so there is a small indie press called Aqueduct Press, who actually Nicola Griffith has some stuff published through them, as well as Sarah Tolmie has a lot of stuff published through them. And one of their first books in this series called Conversation Pieces, they do nonfiction and fiction publications as part of this series. But I think this is the second or third piece published as part of that series. It's called Writing the Other, a Practical Approach by Nisi Shaw and Cynthia Ward. And it's just talking about like how do you write the other, like the other, whether that be women when you're an author, a Black character when you're a white author.
It sounds like the kind of book I really need to read.
Yeah, I unfortunately I don't think that there's many, if any, audiobooks through them. Let me
No, but like I mean, I'm sure they're selling ebooks, so I can just get it in ebook. And, I mean, with nonfiction, I don't mind that much using like a screen reader or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it's fairly short. It's 100 pages or so. And like there's an excerpt from oh wait, hold on. I was gonna say there's an excerpt from The Blazing World, the 18th century novel, not novel. But then I realized it says it's an excerpt from Nisi Shaw's forthcoming novel. So obviously she takes direct influence from The Blazing World. So
that sounds good. No, it sounds very much like the kind of book I want to read. Speaking of that, I found out Nnedi Okorafor has a new novel coming out like early 2025, if the world still exists, and it's called Death of the Author. And those two things, like Nidio Korafor on the one hand and Death of the Author as a title, make me incredibly excited. I haven't even looked at like the back cover thing yet. I'm like,
Nidio
will be-
Okorafor, did he win the Booker
She.
Prize?
She.
Okay.
No, she didn't. But she wrote like the Binti series. I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remote Control, which I feel like, well, I know Jimmy recently read it, and it's probably getting more traction.
Right,
And some other stuff.
Yeah,
There's
and she's done like a lot of
some-
like academic work on like the difference between African sci-fi and Afrofuturism and African American sci-fi, and how those are still like very different things. But because the world is still very racist, we kind of mostly lump all of that together. It's like if it's a black author, it's probably like black sci-fi, and it's like no, there's a difference if you grow up in say Nigeria or Kenya or whatever, and or as a black, as an Afro-American. There's a massive difference between those two things. And she's working in that area. And I've read a bunch of like her essays in other like collections of essays on sci-fi and literary criticism. So her doing like a book called Death of the Author, I'm just like, yeah, this will be very, very good indeed.
Yeah, I read Binti, the Binti trilogy. I was very underwhelmed, if not I did not like it. But then I read Remote Control and I really, really liked it. So yeah, I'm like, all right, I'm 50-50 so far. I'm not sure if I want to pick up anything more by her unless I get some other input on people's experience.
I think for me it was more like I read her nonfiction stuff, her academic stuff before I started reading her fiction. I'm like, I have like a very sort of like a weird background on like where I'm coming from. Because I assume that the way she's writing novels is informed by the stuff she talks about when she's, doing her academic stuff. And that sort of informs my reading at the same time, because, authors are unfortunately not that dead if they also do other stuff. But yeah, so even the stuff that doesn't sort of like, give me enjoyment or whatever, I still see sort of what she's trying to do. And I'm like, yeah. And I appreciate that.
Tharnol, I just realized I didn't see your comment until now. So I have read of Virginia Woolf. The two pieces that I read were The Voyage Out, and Flush, a biography. So, because I'm also, I wouldn't say that I'm obsessed with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but I did go through a phase where I was reading all of her poetry, started reading all of her poetry, and watched The Barretts of Wimpole Street on repeat for a very long time. So
she apparently has the most amazing short story in the Star Wars collection, from a certain point of view, which is about the trash compactor monster.
Yes, my husband did like that one.
And also liked some of her stuff.
Apparently, from what I've heard, Who Fears Death is along the same lines as Remote Control in just its like thematic exploration, as opposed to like Binti. So
yeah,
if I do another one, it'll probably be the Who Fears Death. Plus, I know that there's an adaptation coming out allegedly. So
okay, I think like what I find interesting, like authors like Nidio Korafor and Nicola Griffith and a lot of others. Is when people do both sort of like criticism, literary theory, academic work, and like fiction writing at the same time. Because one of those things that I've always loved is that a certain form of literature is always like a dialogue with other forms of literature. You don't write just to tell a story. You also write about writing in a lot of ways. And with authors that do that like very explicitly when they switch between both fiction and nonfiction, it's sort of like makes it even clearer. And I just really appreciate that, because I feel like thinking about the craft of writing, thinking about the history of writing and so forth is important if you want to do your writing well.
Yeah.
And I just found it very interesting in a lot of ways. And that one of the reasons why I like Nidio Korafor.
Yeah.
I haven't read her yet. I heard she got into some controversy a few years back because of well, it wasn't really her fault. It was kind of she got an award the World Fantasy Award used to be this little statue of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, you can imagine how that went.
Being
Yeah,
awarded a statue of H.P. Lovecraft if you're a black writer is
yeah.
kind of tasteless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be fair to the World Fantasy Award people. I don't think they were trying to offend her, but
I mean,
No,
that,
I mean-
yeah, that was the like the what is it? Design of the statue for however many years.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't design an H.P. Lovecraft statue to award it to her, right?
Yeah.
No,
But-
but it's one of those things that
I
like,
can
at
still,
some point,
I can understand having an objection to it.
yeah, at some point in history, someone had to sit back and go like, actually awarding an H.P. Lovecraft statue to people is kind of problematic because H.P. Lovecraft, despite being a mediocre fantasy writer with a really good imagination, being a very good editor for other
I see him
people's
more as a
fantasy,
horror author. But
was
he did
also
write
an
fantasy.
insanely racist motherfucker, and we
Yeah.
kind of should stop
Yeah.
using him that way. It's kind of the unfortunate part, and that's sort of like where the controversy thing I feel is problematic. Is that it has to sort of come to a point where a black person goes like, "Hey, don't you think that's kind of fucked up that you're giving me an H.P. Lovecraft statue?"
Yeah.
Which then leads all the hatred once again to the black person, and that's fucked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
that is.
stupid. I mean, certainly, like a long time ago, I can understand deciding that's going to be your award, but you would kind of hope that sometime between then and now, someone would have gone, actually,
Hey.
guys, should we like rethink this? Maybe, I don't know, Frank Herbert or no, not for fantasy
J.R.R.
award, but-
Tolkien.
or a Tolkien bust or, or an
Yeah.
abstract
I'm sure.
statue, a sword and a stone, or,
I'm sure they'll
I'm
be
sure-
like, "Oh, orcs racist" thing will come out.
Or how about not even make it about a singular author or person and just
Yeah, make like a
Yeah,
Pegasus statue and give
I
it
would,
to.
I would go for something like a sword stuck in an anvil, or I
Yeah.
don't know, a ring or a tower, or
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas you can do without like pinning it to one specific author, which will always be problematic because authors are problematic
People.
by definition. People
Yep.
are problematic by definition,
Yeah.
and especially over time.
yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Anyways,
Guys, I'm noticing my brain is winding down because it is approaching 11 p.m. here. I'm going to call it.
All right.
Thanks for another awesome pub. Thank you three for joining us. Thank you everybody. Mostly pretty much all regulars, unless there are lurkers about who have not been commenting.
I don't know about the Capricious Fox. I dimly remember the name. I love the name though.
I've seen Capricious Fox before. I remember Capricious Fox popping up at some point in the pub. Good to see you come into the chat and step out of your lurking corner. Ryan has been lurking apparently. But yeah, great to see you all on screen and in the comments. Next week, yeah, as usual. Sunday pub when the Sunday pub. Okay, now all the
Probably
lurkers come
not
out.
Be here 'cause
Michael
I'll be
was
coming back from a
lurking.
vacation.
Yeah, here's another lurker. Terry was lurking. If you're lurking, out yourself now, or forever stay out of the pub. No,
which
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
honestly
Banished
kind
from
of
the pub.
it defeats the purpose of lurking, I suppose, if you out yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to out yourself. That's fine. Lurkers are also welcome. It's more fun if people actually say something. But yeah, lurkers are also always welcome. I don't want to scare the lurkers away. Some people are just shy. I understand that. I
Totally fine.
am not.
Go
Anyway.
read the Jungle. Go read The Jungle.
The Jungle. I read The Jungle in high school. It sort of traumatized me as far as like wanting to ever eat food again, basically.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
It's the book that single-handedly started the existence of the FDA. Think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. The power of fiction.
I mean, it's
based on
socialist
fact.
propaganda, but at least we got the FDA out of it.
Yeah. It's
It's
don't
pretty
squint.
impressive.
Don't squint like that, Raph. Come on.
let's let's not start
Anyways,
Raph
no,
off
no.
on that particular
No.
conversation.
I just
We'll
like. I
be
just,
here
like,
for
find it
another half
funny.
an hour.
No, I just found it funny that like there is that quote from Upton Sinclair. It's like, I wanted to touch America at its head and at its heart, and I hit them in the guts instead. Which is he wanted socialism, but instead he got the FDA. So I guess
Anyways, Matt needs to go to bed, so we're
Wrap
gonna
up.
Actually, Matt
Ew.
needs to continue
Bye.
his binge watch of The Sopranos, which I've never seen before.
Never seen The Sopranos?
I never watched The Sopranos back in the day. I have had phases where I was
I'm more of like an
I didn't
alto
have a television.
person, but
more of a what?
an alto person.
Hey.
I sing bass, so yeah. Anyway, see you all next week. Have a lovely week.
All right, take care,
All right.
everyone.
Cheers.